Brazil is a country of vibrant colors, fasting infectious music and warm smiles. Brazilians are known for their love of life, their resilience, and their strong sense of community. But beneath the surface of this cheerful nation lies a painful reality. Police corruption. This issue casts a dark shadow over the lives of many Brazilians, particularly those living in marginalized communities. Imagine a country where the very people sworn to protect you are the ones you fear the most. This is the harsh reality for many Brazilians. Police corruption takes many forms, from petty bribery to extortion, brutality, and even extrajudicial killings. This corruption erodes trust in the police force and undermines the rule of law. It creates a climate of fear and impunity where criminals operate freely and ordinary citizens live in fear. Understanding this issue is crucial to understanding the complexities of Brazilian society and the challenges it faces. Police corruption in Brazil is a systemic problem, deeply rooted in a complex web of historical, social, and economic factors. This issue is not just a recent development, but has been festering for decades, if not centuries. The country's long history of colonialism, slavery, and authoritarian rule has created a culture of impunity and a deep chasm between the powerful and the powerless. These historical injustices have laid the groundwork for a society where corruption can thrive unchecked. Statistics paint a grim picture of the situation. According to a 2020 report by the Brazilian Forum on Public Security, over 6,000 people were killed by police in Brazil in that year alone. This staggering number highlights the severity of the issue and the urgent need for reform. Many of these killings are considered extrajudicial executions, carried out with little to no accountability. The lack of consequences for such actions only emboldens corrupt officers, perpetuating a cycle of violence and mistrust. Public perception of the police is overwhelmingly negative. A 2019 survey by the Datafolha Institute found that 63% of Brazilians do not trust the police. This widespread distrust is a significant barrier to effective law enforcement and community cooperation. This mistrust is fueled by a constant stream of news reports and personal experiences of police brutality, extortion, and corruption. Every new incident reported in the media further erodes public confidence in the police force. The lack of trust in law enforcement has devastating consequences for Brazilian society. It discourages citizens from reporting crimes, cooperating with investigations, and seeking justice. When people feel that the police are part of the problem rather than the solution, they are less likely to engage with the justice system. It also creates a breeding ground for organized crime and violence. In areas where the police are seen as corrupt or ineffective, criminal organizations can gain power and influence, further destabilizing communities and perpetuating a cycle of violence and fear. One of the most alarming manifestations of police corruption in Brazil is the emergence and growth of militias. These groups have become a significant force, altering the social and political landscape of the country. These illegal groups, often composed of former and current police officers, operate with near impunity in many parts of the country, particularly in Rio de Janeiro. Their presence is felt in the daily lives of the residents, who are often caught in the crossfire of their operations. Militias control territory through violence and intimidation, extorting money from residents for protection and controlling access to essential services like water, electricity, and transportation. This control extends to every aspect of life in the areas they dominate, creating a parallel state where the rule of law is replaced by the rule of the gun. They often operate in collusion with corrupt politicians and businesses, further tightening their grip on power. This collusion ensures that they remain untouchable, with their activities often overlooked or even supported by those in power. The rise of the militias is a symptom of the deep-seated corruption and impunity that plague Brazil's security forces. The lack of accountability within the police and other security agencies has allowed these groups to flourish unchecked. These groups thrive in environments where the state is weak or absent, filling the power vacuum and exploiting the population for their own gain. In many favelas, the state is either unable or unwilling to assert control, leaving residents at the mercy of these armed groups. The militia's reign of terror has had a devastating impact on the communities they control. The social fabric of these areas is torn apart, with trust eroded and fear becoming a constant companion for many residents. Residents live in fear of violence and reprisal, often too afraid to speak out against the abuses they witness. This culture of fear ensures that the militia's power remains unchallenged, as any dissent is swiftly and brutally dealt with. The militia's control over essential services traps many residents in a cycle of dependency and exploitation. Without access to basic necessities, people are forced to rely on these groups, further entrenching their power and making it nearly impossible to break free from their grip. The assassination of Marielle Franco in 2018 sent shockwaves through Brazil, shaking the very foundations of its society. Her death brought international attention to the pervasive issue of police corruption and violence in the country, sparking outrage and calls for change. Franco, a Black, openly gay city councilwoman from Rio de Janeiro, was a vocal critic of police brutality and militia violence. She was a beacon of hope for many marginalized communities. Her murder, which remains unsolved, was widely seen as a targeted killing meant to silence her activism and stifle the voices of those she represented. The assassination was intended to intimidate others who dared to speak out against the powers that be, but it had the opposite effect. Franco's death sparked a wave of protests across Brazil and around the world, uniting people from all walks of life in a common cause. People demanded justice for Marielle and an end to police impunity, chanting her name and carrying her image as a symbol of resistance. The outcry over Franco's assassination highlighted the growing frustration and anger among Brazilians over the issue of police violence, which had been simmering for years. The government's failure to address these issues only fueled the fire, leading to more widespread and determined protests. It also galvanized a new generation of activists and social movements determined to fight for justice and accountability, inspired by Franco's courage and dedication. The fight for justice for Marielle Franco continues to this day, with her name becoming a rallying cry for those demanding change. Activists and human rights groups are relentless in their demand for a thorough and impartial investigation into her murder, refusing to let her death be in vain. Her legacy lives on in the countless Brazilians who refuse to be silenced, who draw strength from her example and continue to fight for a more just and equitable Brazil. Marielle Franco's spirit endures in the hearts of those who believe in justice, equality, and the power of collective action to bring about meaningful change.